Hello everyone, my name is Weston Deaton and this is the Dry Creek Park revamp located in Longmont, Colorado. So getting into the importance why this matters to me, I wanted to point out where specifically this site is and how it pertains to me and where I grew up. So in the bottom corner of that photo, the dark blue is where my childhood home is in Longmont, and then the light blue is was my middle school, and my elementary school is in the pink, and my high school is in the yellow, and the sites with the dotted red around. So that's I wanted to just point out how central this site is to me and how close it is to home. I also included some community members' quotes and kind of their thought process on some of the community issues surrounding loitering in parks in and around Longmont. It's not specific to Dry Creek Park itself, but as you get east in Longmont, these things start to come up. So getting into the SWOT analysis, I think that the site has a lot of strengths. It's located in a beautiful part of town with views of the mountains. It has updated and modern park features, and it's a sled hill in the winter time, which I remember going to a lot growing up. And I think it's convenient as it's central to those three schools and the community in the west part of Longmont. It also provides a good turnaround during school zone, during drop-off pickup times for the middle school. And I think some weaknesses are the inadequate lighting towards the back of the park, which I'll get to later. And then I think almost the too much parking. As you go further and further down the lot, you notice that there's just no reason for all that parking as the park stands right now. And then I think they have all these dedicated sports fields, but they barely get used because they don't actually have teams use them. It's just like, it seems like it's maybe there for a one-day thing, but right now it's just being neglected. I think some of the opportunities could be like a sled rental area in the winter where that bathroom is, which I'll show later as well. And then the west end of the park engagement, and I say park as like the whole thing, but I really mean that parking lot. The park actually lies more east. I also think adding light, and then I think it could be a good potential event space for vendors, or maybe a farmer's market of sorts, as it's on a narrower kind of roadway. And I think some of the threats it faces is persistent loitering patterns with the homeless population coming in. I also think it gets a bad high school population representation because it's kind of hidden from that main road. And then like car meets and seasonal overgrowth with the creek being nearby. Zooming in on my project, indicated site in the top left, you can see it zoomed out. So that big green area is the sports field I was talking about, and then that strip below it is that parking lot we're focusing on. This one shows it a little bit more zoomed in. And then as you look at the part that's in the red, that's the west little quarter of the parking lot that I want to focus on. That sees the most negative attention. Continuing on with the subject, kind of an overview of what's going on. The blue is where the actual park, like playground structure lies. So that's visible from the road on the east. You can kind of see the entrance. And then as you continue west, where I've highlighted in red, that's where that parking lot is that I want to focus on. It's a little bit too far, like you wouldn't park there and go hang out at the park, and there's always parking by the actual park. So this makes no sense to be what it is. They've thrown in this turnaround, but it's never been busy enough to even need to be used. Some of the things that go down, I've just put in labels below, like drug use and loud noise. And I just don't think it's good. One of the big issues is what I was saying was how the park is situated so far west, where that red ring is. They have a police officer an on-duty police officer often sit in that west side of the parking lot, and he just sits there with his lights off, aimed at catching people just driving in. He just turns his lights on and they just turn around. But that's just such a waste of a job, I think, to have someone on staff doing that. It just gets dark and you can't see it. So it's a good zone for people that want to do bad things to be in. I think some of the community engagement that would be important just to implement or surround with or let know of the project would be local homeowners and community members, as there's housing to the west of the site, almost, and not very far at all. Like, you can hear what's going on from their house if it's happening at the park. You can also see the light pollution, so I think that would be important. City of Longmont departments, so these could be all types of departments, like the Parks and Rec, Planning and Development Services, local planning boards, and also maybe the Public Safety Board, / the people that are on that. And then I also want to talk about the neighborhood HOAs, how they might be involved. I remember our HOA dealing with a lot of things growing up in that neighborhood, so it might be important to involve them with potential redesign. So who's affected today, and we get into years to come, but today I think it's residents that live around the park. They deal with that noise, the discarded items, trash, the vision of drug use, and the reduced safety it brings to the community. I think law enforcement and first responders who also deal with calls and serious matters related to the subject are affected. And then parents whose kids are using the parking lot for bad things, and maintenance crews, and then maybe homeless individuals that use the park as a place to sleep. Years to come, I think it's the same thing. Residents, park users, and then, but it does get into the design side of things a little bit with the future developers and planners that plan on coming in, just because they have to deal with the repercussions of what our design is gonna become. So the specific tactics deal a lot with the same types of issues, like where these things would happen, but it's different on the type of people. So we have local residents, park users, unhoused reps, and maybe service providers, local businesses, police, public safety, individuals, and then city departments. So I think a lot of these specific things could happen at community centers like libraries or, middle ground areas. It wouldn't just happen in a neighborhood house. I think this is a bigger design proposal than that. I think a lot of these things could also be done through surveys and neighborhood meetings, maybe posters and QR codes. I think it's interesting to point out how we could do for like the park users specific on-site pop-up tables and booths like they do around the CU campus. Hung up surveys, QR codes again. And I think it would be good timing for a lot of this would be peak park hours and daytime, afternoons, and weekends. And then I think for local businesses, it'd be interesting to do some more door-to-door stuff and go online, get some interviews and quotes on what's specifically happening to them and are they affected. So getting into my proposal specifically, I want to touch on the lighting thing pretty heavily. I think there is lighting, but it's just not adequate. The lights aren't really bright, and they don't really work. So I think implementing lights on the corners of the site and surrounding the bathroom would be important. I also think making them motion censored so it doesn't affect the homeowners to the west would be important. And then as well as the seating, I've highlighted the 2 picnic benches that are near the site. And I think on a small scale level, these can just be moved. These benches often provide an area of refuge for people using this west side of the site that we don't want people to necessarily be in as much. So I think relocating those more towards those sports fields would lend itself to a better outcome for everyone involved. I also think some little bit of landscape design going into these areas, nothing crazy, but I think it would be good to point on anti-seating kind of art things like we do in Boulder on Pearl Street with like the designs and you can't quite sleep or sit on. And I also think these pathways carved into the landscape that help direct people through would be important as you get further along. And then also I've looked into these low water use sprinklers to keep people out of the field. So like it would help people not really run around the fields at night and it doesn't take that much water. So for the basic timeline, I think phase 1 would be weeks 1 through 2, and it could move into phase 2, which would be weeks 3 through 5, phase 3, weeks 6 through 7, phase 4, weeks 8 through 9, and so on. I think it starts off with site visits, day and night, initial site analysis as well, and then into phase 2, start rolling out surveys and QRs. Phase 3, create a final design concept. It can be unpolished, I think towards the end of week 6 into week 7, prepare the proposal. So after meeting with departments and services, then you can prepare the actual proposal. And then week 4, in theory, the Parks Department signs off on everything. And then going into week 5, I think the specific vegetation, like I talked about with these landscape design-oriented things, would be important. And then the motion-activated lights can start to go up, test the sensors. And I think following up and maintaining this landscape would be important as well, as if we don't want to see it fade into the cracks. And then the end of it, week 6, conducting follow-up meetings and finalizing the design would be important. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.